What's up, dorks? Thor Love and Thunder has finally dropped in theaters. Is it as good as we thought? Was it really needed? We're going to let you know in this review with no spoilers at first and spoilers at the end. Had a little bit of mixed feelings coming out of this movie theater experience. I really love some of the things they did with Thor in this movie and some of the visuals and just the carry on into the cosmic space of the MCU was really great with this movie, but some of the comedy was a little hit or miss for me, and sometimes I was just thinking this movie should have stick with one tone where it's very serious in some parts and then very comical and lighthearted in other times. And I wish that they would have focused on one kind of tone in this movie and either went full dark and gritty with Thor or full comical. Because I see underneath some of the themes in this movie, there's a really great Thor film in here.
Yeah, I like the movie. I try not to knock it too much for being a comedy because that's how he is a lot in his solo movies. That's how he is in the Avengers movies. He's used as kind of comic relief. He doesn't really have that moment. I've only seen Thor have one really good moment for me, and it was in Infinity War when he comes to Wakanda. I think it was necessary, though. It was cool, but not necessary. And that's how I noticed that a lot throughout this movie. Again, just like in Thor Ragnarok, it's just very funny in places that it shouldn't have been funny. But all around, a very enjoyable movie to me.
This was like as 50-50 as a movie gets for me. Like everybody's pointing to like the excessive humor, and I think that's definitely part of why I didn't enjoy it too much. I guess like for me at a certain point it started to feel like they were making like a Thor parody movie, but I think for the most part it was an enjoyable watch. Kind of piggyback off what Corey said, didn't feel necessary. I don't think I walked away from this with any like greater understanding of Thor, which to me, like I thought that's what was advertised was like Thor was gonna, figure out who he was. We're gonna have this new lease on life kind of thing. It was alright. It was cool. I definitely am not gonna see it a second time. I need a little bit more than fun sometimes from certain movies.
It tried to make everything a little too digestible. This movie has a lot of huge scale things that happens in it cosmic wise. We're really building the cosmic side of the MCU with this movie. It gets undercut a lot with jokes and things that should be really high gravity stuff is always undercut with a joke in this movie, which I think does make it okay for a younger audience, which these movies are catered for, of course. I just think there was something really awesome they could have had with this Thor movie that doesn't quite catch the lightning in the bottle that it should have with a premise like this. I will say Christian Bale, great in the movie. Good villain for the MCU based on what we've had in the past. Some of the cool visuals with him and even his origin at the beginning, very impactful with why you kind of believe what's going on with him. The Necro Sword is kind of a mind of its own. I love the aura around the Necro Sword, but they don't really get too deep into it with the movies. They really try to focus on the Thor and the Thor storyline, which I just want to say real quick. Loki and Loki are hooking up in the Loki show and Thor are hooking up in the Thor movies. What's going on with the Thor franchise right now?
The Necro Sword is a sword that can kill gods. Really big fucking deal, right? You would think. I kind of felt like they were just like, this is the Necro Sword, it kills gods, the end. I would have liked to get a bit more history and mythology surrounding that weapon. Maybe who's used it before. To me, it started to do this thing where, because everything was such a big joke, it kind of undermined the stakes of the movie. It kind of felt like nothing was being taken seriously, even by the characters in them. And if like the characters aren't taking the actual threat seriously, except for maybe 10 minutes in the movie, it's hard for me to as well. Like, even though Bale's performance was great, when you put it alongside the others in the rest of the movie, it almost feels awkward.
Something huge in this movie that I think a lot of people would see from the trailers is the Guardians aren't in it quite as much as you might think they would be, even though they market the Guardians very heavily in the trailers. So don't go into this expecting like the Guardians and the Thor buddy cop film. Even though I think that'd be something great to see. Thor growth in this, I wasn't expecting this movie to take Thor in the direction that they did towards the end of the film, and I do think this will be a little more divisive for the fans, including that this is in Phase 4, probably the most
Mid.
Phase 4 is having a hard time finding it standing with the fans right now, and I think it's just because there's not a lot of aim with where we're particularly aiming with the MCU, and Thor doesn't really help in that direction.
I would like to spend a little more time on Omnipotent City.
To rank this movie, to go ahead and get into spoilers, I would say this movie for me is rocking like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10 on a really good day. There were some cool action scenes with this movie, and Christian Bale's performance is worthy of a second viewing for me. I really want to see a little more from his performance with this movie, I would say. I needed a little more from Thor's development with this, and I needed a little more of Christian Bale in this. And I think it would have been a lot higher in the ranking.
It's like a 5.5 for me. It may be a 6 on a good day. I know that sounds harsh, but I did have a good time. I just think even standalone, the movie was underwhelming to my expectations in terms of like scale, in terms of what it meant for the character.
I think me and Cole have the same rate. I'm gonna give it a 7, but I feel like I like it a lot more than maybe you did. Definitely more than Dallas did. I did think it was funny, but I felt like going into that movie, it was a lot like Thor 3 and how comical Thor 3 was. It was more jokes, definitely a little more comical. I love Bale. I got past the jokes. Overall, still a good movie. I enjoyed it.
With that, I think we can get into some spoilers. What would have made this movie automatic in the Pimp of Pimps category for me if Gore the God Butcher rolled up to Omnipotent City himself and killed Zeus.
Million percent.
You
Million percent.
instead of that basic scene of Thor just rolling up and them having like a goofy espionage, like we're gonna just fuck up the council meeting, you would have really shown how strong Gore was, because even Zeus says it. He's killing a bunch of fucking B-rate gods. It don't even matter who these bitches are. I think it would have been great if that's when Gore the God Butcher showed up. A dark cloud comes over the very sunny, omnipotent city where the sun is, dog. Gets real dark out of nowhere. Everybody would have been shitting their pants. Even Zeus looks to Thor for a second and is like, listen, dog, we're talking about the Necro sword, okay? We ain't want mass panic in the fucking streets.
I feel like the lack of God killing we saw Gorr do is a big problem for me. Very much feels like multiverse of madnessy, where it's like, damn, I thought we was really gonna be in the multiverses and we were in like 3. I really wanted to see Gorr do some more damage. I think him killing Zeus would have been really cool. I think seeing him kill anyone except for the god, like of course he killed the god, you know, that's the domino of sorts, get shit started. And that was a really cool scene. I would have liked to see him kill other gods. I think Zeus would have been cool because of Thor's adoration for Zeus. So if Thor were to hear or see Gorr just behead Zeus in that way, I think that would have been really hard. I think Omnipotent City was really cool, and I think visually it was one of the more beautiful parts of the movie. I think we should have spent some more time there, and I think the time that we spent there should have been a bit more meaningful. As I was watching the scenes between Thor and Zeus, I don't know about you guys, but it felt like it was dragging a little bit for me. I would have loved to spend more time there if we were actually going to be exploring it. Maybe talking to a few other gods. Like I would have liked to see some other gods actually speak, actually, you know, put a name to a face, maybe further categorize like why gods are shitty.
The whole weapons thing in this movie is kind of weird, where they have their own
Yeah.
personalities. It's like we just spent all of Infinity War / Endgame acknowledging that Stormbreaker's like end all be all of weapons, and now you're going back on that. Thor at the end of this movie has Mjolnir again, and it's seeing that the lightning bolt is more powerful than that.
Stormbreaker having like a mind of its own and being upset with Thor using Mjolnir and like Thor having to like sweet talk and like get beside him and rub. Like I thought that was mega weird, man. It just made me
Like-
feel a little uncomfortable in the theater.
Like when did that become a thing for them to have like personalities to the point in which they're jealous? I feel like I don't have a problem with it, but it just feels weird to like for that to be an issue now of all times. That actually segues into like a problem that I have with some of the scenes here. Is like we're joking to joke. And joking just to joke is fine, but when we're telling the same joke in a story, in a narrative, where it seems like we're leading to something, and it's like, nah, it was just funny. Well, what the fuck did we do it for?
Or there's cosmic entities being introduced like eternity and things that are like, we're talking like
deals.
top 3 characters in the
Yeah.
MCU. Eternity is eternity. He is the multiverse. He's everything. And that being like Gore the God Butcher's main thing, it was basically an Infinity Stone arc without an Infinity Stone arc. You don't have to gather the Infinity Stones. You just need Stormbreaker, open up this gate. I can wish all the gods away. That not even coming to fruition in the way that it did. It sets up Gorr to be this really cool character and then undercuts it in the same way that they undercut Wanda in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where it's just whatever the object is making them bad. I think they're losing what makes a badass villain. Thanos wasn't a villain because of the Infinity Stones. He was a villain because he's a villain and he used the Infinity Stones. These heroes that they're trying to turn into villains like Wanda, and they're trying to make Gore the God Butcher like a sympathetic villain. It's just not working with me in that way. I think you need villains to be bad. Don't try to redeem every character.
We're blaming the Necro Sword for Gore the God Butcher's behavior, despite giving him a perfectly adequate reason as to why he would want to kill all the gods. I would have loved to see Gore the God Butcher go out on a shield I would have loved for the Necro Sword to be discarded and for them to maybe even think that the Necro Sword was the reason why he wanted to kill Gons. He's like, nah, no, it's still fuck you. For real. I hate the ending. I felt like it felt very flat and pointless. Like it didn't move me emotionally. Like even the stuff that was happening with Jane Foster didn't really do much for me. To me, it makes no sense for Gorr the God Butcher to look at two gods sharing this moment together, and that being what moves him to choose to see his daughter again, as opposed to killing all the gods. If anything, as I said earlier, that's where I double down.
It's just Thor's line of like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die with like the person I love, essentially. And somehow that just like makes Gorr the God Butcher think, well, I'm dying. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die with my daughter. That magically, it's implied that she's not even brought back her original self, that she's recreated through eternity and now has these amazing powers. I think that's what has the most sour taste in my mouth is the ending, because it almost played like a sitcom of her lasering the frying pan. Like it just felt like we transitioned to a sitcom TV show for a moment. I was almost waiting for the laugh track to open up. Like, I'm making you your flapjacks. I don't like
Yeah.
flapjacks, Dad. Laser eyes. You better get to school, kid. Let's go
Yeah.
fuck up these people.
After leaving a movie like that, I was hoping to see maybe some kind of direction. It was just a movie, and I did enjoy it, but I don't know what's next. I don't know where we're going or where we're heading.
I got two things for this movie. This movie sets up Thor. His final story arc, quote unquote, is really you're introducing Gorr the God Butcher in a time that Thor is figuring out what it means to actually be a god. You know, he's lost his dad. I say Odin wasn't that impactful of a god in my eyes. I don't think the people of Earth knew what the fuck Odin was doing for Earth every single day.
Mhm.
So if this movie did anything, I think it was supposed to show Thor what it meant to be a god. Because at the beginning of this movie, the people of Asgard are freaking struggling, man. Thor's out here just like meditating, doing bullshit things. The Guardians are actually dying. I think it's really huge that Thor destroys the last shrine of the civilization at the beginning of this movie with the Guardians, just showing that Thor has no mindset of what it actually means to be a god and what even the importance of that to this civilization all the way through the movie, that conveys that Thor is supposed to know what it means to be a god, and then actually no, Thor's a dad now. That you just burst the entire story arc of the movie of what Thor should be moving forward. If Thor is going to return, it should be as he's a god. He should almost have the same role as Captain Marvel in a way, where he's going around the whole universe, settling shit, making sure everything's good, almost in a Guardians of the Galaxy way, but in a scale that the Guardians can't compare to, because it's obvious throughout the movie that when the Guardians couldn't handle something, they just call in Thor. He comes in from his meditation or his workout, and then boom, it's all good. But I think another thing this movie fails at, and we discussed this in our Marvel tier list video, the Eternals. They established that Sprite is actually the reason that the Greek myths even exist, that Athena is based on Athena, and that Zeus and all these things aren't actually real. It's actually Eternals. But then we go to Omnipotent City, we see that Zeus is a real person. It doesn't seem like he's an Eternal in any way, shape, and form.
No.
And so it's like what's happening to the continuity of the MCU now? Is there going to be something that explains this whole Eternals myth thing with the Greek gods? Why are Greek gods existing in Omnipotent City? Are they only to Earth? Are they space bound? Do Celestials outweigh the gods because Celestials are in Omnipotent City? So what is the hierarchy of the gods in the MCU, which we touched on in our Moon Knight reviews? And it's almost too many gods all at once because we don't know where each god fits in the scale of things. Does Khonshu rank with Zeus? Does Zeus outweigh Celestials? Arishan the Judge seemed like he could just blink Earth out of existence if he wanted to, but I wasn't getting that same feeling from Zeus. There's a certain misdirect happening with Phase Forward right now that we're not quite sure where it's going. You set up with Loki that Kang the Conqueror is going to be this huge deal,
Mhm.
and it doesn't seem like we're actually going to get any payoff to that until maybe even Phase 5. They're introducing characters in Phase 4, though, that are all multi-dimensional things. Shang-Chi, multi-dimensional. Doctor Strange, multi-dimensional. While Thor Love and Thunder doesn't particularly focus on anything multiversal, characters such as Eternity would be a multiversal level character. On top of, in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they show you the Living Tribunal. But the fact that our movies are colliding in continuity with Eternals and Thor Love and Thunder, I'm just not sure Marvel is sure where they're going. And if they do know the direction they're heading in, I'm not sure if they're displaying that correctly to the fans, that we can maintain interest in an MCU that grows every single day. I think Phase 4, if you had to encompass what Phase 4 was, it would really just be a rebuilding phase. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to find out, because we'll let you know if we don't like anything moving forward with the MCU. If you want to know what we think of other MCU titles, you can check out our MCU tier list video on the channel. We also just finished up The Boys season finale, so if you want to see what we think about The Boys, make sure you check that out as well. Go ahead and like the video if you made it this far, because you obviously enjoyed what you were watching, and comment and let us know what you thought of Thor Love and Thunder. Did you love it? Did you hate it? We'd love to know what you think. We'll discuss it with you in the comment section below. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.